Okay, so welcome back, Bo.
Here again.
We're going to do the third final part of this mini-series, and we're going to try and look at an example and go through the soda loop so that... And I think I'm pretty confident because every time I do this, even in training, people throw out, oh, you need to avoid this and you could consider this. And I go, yeah. And then it's added to my experience and it helps my decision making moving forward. So from a personal point of view, that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
But we're going to look at a situation that maybe isn't your most typical kind of high pressure situation, but maybe it's just a bit more nuanced and maybe a little bit more applicable to a wider range of people. Okay. So the circumstance that we're talking about is that there's a school, let's say a three-form school. Their early years leader has just been sort of headhunted. They're amazing, and quite rightly they've been picked up by somebody else, and it's also sort of closer to home. So there's not a lot we can do to try and keep that person. So let's take that out of the kind of situation. And now we're looking. The situation is that we're a Year 5 teacher. We are really ambitious. But there's a really, really secure phase leader in Upper Key Stage 2. They've been there successful for a period of time, and they've got a lot of years in their career as well. Mm-hmm. And then this opportunity has come to us. Our head teacher has come to us as a teacher and said, look, I know that it's not your area of experience, but we see really great things in your skill set. We would love to create these pathways for you, and we'd love you to contribute to this, to leading early years. Can you go away, think about it, if you would be willing to do it in an interim period of time? Just, to remind you, that interim period of time is an Ofsted window. So you will, if you take this role, you will be taking early years through that Ofsted period. So just, keep that in your mind as you make that decision. So they walk off, and us as an individual, our soda loop begins. Now, naturally, this isn't sort of make a decision with this time sensitive, but there is a lot of pressure on this. And we want to be making good decisions under pressure because that's the things that move us forward. So just really quickly, let's just talk about where's that pressure coming from for this person? Like, for Year 5 teacher, they are ambitious. Like they're, let's just say they're sort of an M3, M4, that level of experience. But they've shown that they can lead, and they want to be leading in the future. So where's that pressure coming from?
For them, naturally, obviously, with you saying them being ambitious, they want to think where they want to be in like 2 to 5 years' time. But that pressure straight away is going to, I would assume, will come internally with the fact of, I'm really confident in Year 5, but the opportunity's not there. Can I do it? Is going to be the first pressure, I'm assuming. That's like saying to me, right, Jazz, you're in Year 6. Straight away I would think, can I do it? It's not my area of expertise. What are other people going to think of me if it doesn't go well? So that pressure straight away, I think, is going to come internally for that person, I'm assuming. However, going to the soda loop will walk them through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you can sort of see in their mind, but in terms of where this pressure is going to come from? It's like the source of the pressure, kind of.
Yeah, I agree with Jazz. I think it feels like that original source will be from them, and then layer it on. And we've mentioned, haven't we, in the previous podcasts about traits and preferences, talents, etc. So I'm aware that my response to this will be biased towards where I am, and so I'm thinking of options and possibilities and things like that, which would be really motivating. But then I'm thinking, and there's an inspection, so I've got that to contend with. I also wouldn't want to let, being a people pleaser, I wouldn't want to let the head teacher down, so I've kind of put pressure now on myself to say yes immediately because I don't want them to be disappointed. Gosh, they think that much of me, then I'm going to have to do it. It's almost that sort of thing. So even though those, if I was going to commit it to paper, there'd sort of be different elements that would represent the pressure, but it's me that's creating them and sort of bringing them up. So yeah, I agree. Having that bit of calmness, and again, for me, I would want to talk through the soda loop process, and this is a good example because it's a personal decision, isn't it? So I'm going to talk to a friend, a family member, or a colleague, or something, to then go through that soda loop to sort of help me think through.
Would you do that? Like, this is just making me up for a second. So would you do you have a source person that you would go to kind of talk through that process?
Yeah.
Because
me personally, I need that. I need to talk, even if I'm just talking at that person and that person's just interjecting. Okay, how does that make you feel? Okay, so if you did this, I instantly feel so much better having talked it through.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds, it's that old cliche, isn't it? It's a weight off your shoulders, a problem shared.
Yeah.
But I think in this situation, it's really interesting when you do something like the soda loop process, because, like Ben said, it's a decision you have to make, and it's going to impact massively you first and foremost. So you can't sit around a table and say, right, okay, what should I do for my career then, guys?
Sure. Yeah.
It's got to be a decision that's got to come from you. So yeah, I would 100%.
Yeah.
Very similar.
And it's very interesting to me that, again, if we go to those natural colour traits, because my immediate process would be very solitary.
Interesting.
I would, and then I feel like actually once I'd sort of got a lot of my thoughts sort of organised, I would then potentially go to a person then and say, like, here's where I am with this, whereas that wouldn't be part of my process. But I think that's, again, it's about like going with what works for you.
Absolutely.
And Jazz, like to talk about, it is an old cliche, and I'm not going to surprise everyone to start talking about chimp and neuroscience, but the neuroscience that backs up the reason it's a cliche is because it's based in science, as your limbic, your chimp system, it can't make sense of emotions, and and it can't. That part doesn't. And my understanding is it doesn't process thoughts into language. So when you talk, your human is taking those thoughts and those feelings, and it's taking over. And it's the human actually going, oh, this is how you feel about it. Like, so that other rational part of you.
Yeah.
So then that other person goes, okay, then you go, no, you're right, I'll go and do this. And they go, I didn't say anything. But actually, you're bringing both systems of yourself into play just by saying it out loud or by writing it down. And if you keep it in your head, it stays in your limbic system. It never gets into that rational system, which can actually make a helpful plan. But so let's just hammer out. So the first part for this person, let's not, it's a very reasonable head teacher. Their support person, they're away on holiday. They're all in Dubai at work, so you can't talk to anybody else. Because year 5 teachers on their own in this. So let's include that in the situation. So where they are is they've been offered this role. It's exciting, but it's very challenging, and it comes with a lot of pressure internally and externally. Because the reality is that they may well be if this is in a mat, and let's say for the sake of this argument, it is in a mat, so there's a lot of opportunities. And you go into an Ofsted, you do well, that leads to people that just leads to recognition of you. It doesn't go well, you get the recognition of the other. So there is, there are both sides of the coin in terms of, pressure. Pressure is the shadow of opportunity, I think. Michael Johnson, that's an excellent quote. It doesn't help me in the moment. Just after it or just before it helps. So there's that reality as well. But where they want to be is, they want to be in a leadership position. Ultimately, they want their career to progress. And then we won't hammer this point too hard, but they also want to be contributing to the school in a meaningful way. And they want to be contributing to the community in a meaningful way. So that helps with kind of ultimately what the decision they're going to make. So first of all, they've established that situation, and that's an important thing to do, because by doing that, I think we can all hear you've removed yourself from an emotional black and white kind of place to actually, what is the real situation? What's the long-term situation here? And what's actually, where are my values with this? What's truly meaningful to me beyond the surface level of this situation?
Yeah, and I think because this, interestingly, is a personal decision, which could build pressure, then of course you are also aware of other elements of the situation that could be important to this decision that are outside of the professional environment that the head may not be aware of. So if you've got a young family. So if you're expecting a child, if there's some other element, you've got a loved one who either you or your partner is caring for. There's a sort of an integrity bit there as well, is it? Saying, is this the right time? Can I do that? And I think that's all positive information to help around the situation, the broader situation, because you know that the facts are what you've been asked to do as you've described it. Because of the situation, it's going to take a lot of energy and time. So practically, you're probably going to be working a bit later. You're going to be giving more towards that.
Yeah.
Is that appropriate, or will there be, again, when it comes to the options element, what do we want to avoid? I want to avoid being a slave to it. I want to avoid putting additional pressure on.
Yeah.
So therefore, it could be a decision where you say no because.
Well, let's move on to that. That's again naturally segueing in.
We've worked together before.
But let's move on then. We've established that situation. Where they are is they've been given this opportunity. But it's there's pressure with Ofsted and it's completely out of their comfort zone.
Yes.
Where they want to be is they want their career to be progressing and they want to be
ambitious. And
they want to be contributing to the school in a meaningful way. Just in a nutshell, just to keep it as simple as possible. So now let's take there is no sort of young family, but I think that's totally relevant.
It's a perfect time for them.
Let's just say the family timing is good, because there is no two ways about it. Moving from year 5 to early years is going to add to your day. That you're going to have to upskill your knowledge really, really significantly. So the things that you could normally fit into a working day has changed. So let's just go through what are the things that we might jump into this person's mind about. What are the things that I want to avoid?
I think the things that they'd want to avoid would definitely inform naturally the decision they're going to make. But I think things like that, I'm not as confident in early years I'm not confident in early years, I don't know early years at all. So what are they going to do as a result of that? Right? Who can I go to? Or could I go to my head and say, and just be open and honest, is that going to be my decision? Yes, I'm really excited, I do really want this position. However, again, going back to communication and clarity, can I just be really clear that this isn't an area that I'm confident in? So could I have an hour a week where I have a handover with somebody, or an hour a week where I can just have additional time just to get my head round early years practice, because that will inform my decision. So I think, for me personally, the things that I would avoid, I would then make a list of, if these are my problems, how do then I counteract that with a solution?
Yeah.
That would be my process.
And I think sharing that, it's a great idea to share with the head, because if we momentarily look at it from the leader's perspective, and we mentioned in the previous podcast about that sharing and that clarity, is that if I'm now the leader, I'm like, this is great, because what you're telling me that you want to avoid is what I want to avoid as well. So that the person saying, I want to avoid making a mistake. I want to avoid losing the team's confidence because they think they don't know what they're doing. I want to avoid those two things having an impact on the children. Which will impact on their opportunities at that moment, and then therefore on their outcomes, which could impact on what happens in the next key stage. And suddenly you could. So I think if you are being really open with that, and you're then saying, so help me avoid that situation, because what I want is the opposite, I think is really good, because then as a leader I'm feeling great, we're on the same page, and I want this to be a success. So
and that avoids
invest
that pressure as well.
Yes.
Of the added pressure of we're going into an Ofsted window, but I've made it known that actually this isn't an area, but I'm willing to learn. I'm going to put these actionable things in place to make sure that we're in the best possible position we're ever going to be in to be in the Ofsted window, rather than just jumping ahead and saying because then the leader, if you don't communicate, is going to assume actually they're fine with it, they're confident with it.
Yes.
And that's going to cause
whereas actually they're not saying anything because they think, I don't want them to lose confidence in me, so I'm just going to be quiet, and then suddenly, they must be fine because they're just getting on with it, and so on, which comes to that communication. Whereas if they're able to nail down some things to say, I want some support, because it's a partnership, isn't it? A person can't say, well, yeah, but the deal is you're going to have to give me loads of CPD and I'm just going to be a recipient of it. And if you don't, well, it's down to you.
Yeah.
Equally, it's not, I'll go off and do all of these things by myself in order for me to be fully informed on this area that I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
It's both, isn't it? It's like, if you can do this, I'll put that in, but I need this from, like you said, an experienced colleague or a transition period or some additional time. So,
what I hope will be helpful actually is, I think we're really sort of running through this. I think we've been in these types of situations with others, if not ourselves. But maybe for sort of less experienced leaders, like if we just run through. So the first thing, if we're saying, well, what do we want to avoid in this situation? We're here. Here's where we want to be. Right now, let's move on to what we want to avoid, and then we'll move on to the options to sort of bridge that gap. Having a negative impact on the children. That's the first thing that seems to have come up.
Yeah.
What are the other things, even if they might seem kind of... So for me, losing face with the head teacher. In whatever way, we can look at that. What are the other things that we would want to avoid in this situation, potentially this year 5?
I mean, losing face, I think, is... could be interpreted as an ego element, which is in the time. But I think, so whether or not this is a different point, but that reputational damage. And you mentioned the scenario that it's in a trust, so you know other people go to see that as well, and possibly a situation which that might not appeal to that person, but the damage then of a kind of, we want to avoid being a scapegoat for anything that's gone wrong. And that could impact on future similar moves, which is more of a leader's issue. You said to me that if someone does this and it all goes wrong, then that's the message, then that's the narrative that will go through. It's like, don't do that, it's too much of a risk, you know. So you don't want, look what happened. Any other things kind of jump into in your mind in terms of avoidances?
You want to avoid that person. I suppose you want to avoid that person feeling the pressure to quickly make that decision. So I suppose how that person feels, that, you know, like we said, because the head's asked me, I've got to say yes. And that's what you want to avoid to do. You know, you don't want to do that, because if their long-term goal is to be, you know, they're ambitious, they want to, you know, a promotion and so forth, quickly making that decision because someone said, and you can't possibly say no, if that doesn't go well. But also she wants to avoid early years failing in an Ofsted window. That's a massive thing that's going to be on their radar.
So we've got, you know, there's lots there. I think, you know, and if we, and naturally, when I do this person, because my natural, I go to sort of quite big things, and then I move on. Like that's that natural sort of tendency of mine. Whereas the people with the sort of higher green, higher blue energy, they're more ones like, and Alan, think about this, and Alan, we need to think about this, and it's incredibly helpful to have that sort of in the room. But again, by following this process, it almost forces me. So I think, well, if I've done 3, I need to do more than that. Like, we always find more things to avoid than 3, so I need to keep going here. There's also the sort of negative impact on your family, I think. To say, like, I know that we said that there's no like big situation, but you don't want to be working till whatever each night. Like, so that's another thing I think to factor in here. Definitely. But once you've captured that, so you know, we don't have a negative impact on the children of early years. We don't want to lose face, and we've worked hard to protect our reputation and to build a reputation, to be a reliable, helpful part of the team. We don't want to suddenly ruin all of that in whatever we decide to do. We don't want to sort of be scapegoated. We don't want to have that negative impact on the family. We don't want to rush a decision either. We don't want to sort of fall into people pleasing, because not only does that lead you maybe to a decision you're not proud of, but for me personally, that would continue me down a path that I really work hard to avoid, because I am a sort of a socially orientated person. So my first instinct isn't to shut someone down; it's to try and find a solution for them that they're happy with. So for me, if I do fall into people pleasing, it's a path onto a slippery slope that I don't want to be on. And also I think they don't want to be part of, you know, they don't want an Ofsted report where early years is the is the only issue.
They're
I think that's the reality of it. But by creating that, they can now move on to options.
Yeah.
So now, I don't know, Ben's been chomping at the bit now to start. So in terms of like, what are their options here? Obviously, their option is if we do it a little bit like this. So they can just say yes straight away. They can say stop talking. The answer's yes.
Before the
I'll do anything.
sentence.
I'll do anything for you, boss.
You had me at
the
hello.
answer's yes. But what have we done there? One, people pleasing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we've landed on that spike.
Yeah.
Rushing decision. Obviously, we've landed on that spike. I'd also say potentially losing face and reputational damage. What are your thoughts on that? Because you've jumped straight.
Because if you've said yes straight away, well, what's the next thing they're going to say yes to and yes to and yes to? So are they really making the decision for the right reasons? Or are they just saying yes because they just want to get to the top without making those right decisions for them, but also the children and their team around them?
Yeah. And there's that balance, isn't there? Because you naturally don't want to be like a negative force. You want to be a force of possibilities and move things forward. But if you turn around and say, yes, I'm going to be great at this, they're thinking, well, actually, this is a big challenge and it is early years. And if you don't offer any balance if you don't offer any kind of, okay, this is going to be a big challenge, it's way outside of my current knowledge base, but I'm going to do this, this and this. You risk looking flippant or
well, you also, I think you're demonstrating you lack a decision-making process to the head teacher.
They're going to say yes to everything.
Yeah, so anything that comes, yes. You don't even have to finish the sentence.
What other options do we have here? So just say yes is one, not a particularly good one. What else?
Just saying, on the other side, just no. Straight away, no, this isn't, no.
So if we just said no, and I'm not saying that if I was going to process, but I would naturally kind of go, okay, keep going back and forth like this. I do think that when you're under time pressure, that is a helpful thing to do. To sort of go, right, here's an idea, here's a possibility, quickly go against what I'm trying to avoid. Yeah, don't even think about that one again, that's terrible. Or this one holds water if I can find something. But so I think for the sake of this, if we just saying no, what's that? Are we how much are we affecting there? So is it having a negative impact on the children if we just say no?
Yeah, to some degree, definitely, because they're left without a leader, left without a teacher.
Losing face with that? Yeah. Reputational damage?
Yeah.
Yeah. Negative impact on your family? Longer term, potentially, because then if you never get asked again, you get sort of annoyed and you get, petulant.
You're unhappy with the reason you said no. You said no, but you're actually deeply unhappy with it because you didn't fully go through the decision, and then that impacts on how you are, how you behave with other people. Then it's that sort of thing. And
then the Ofsted could go badly.
Yeah.
Especially if somebody with a much less developed skill set than you goes into there, and are you rushing a decision? You're still rushing a decision.
Yeah.
So immediately answering yes or no.
It's not.
Those don't feel like they're getting us past the spikes we're trying to get past.
I think we leave it there. I mean, that's
so just sit there.
That's just simple.
So just stare at them.
Don't say yes and don't say no.
Okay, so other possibilities here.
I mean, what occurs to me, I don't know if you think this, but and I'm thinking about the process itself, is to involve the head in this instance with that process to say, could I talk to you tomorrow to explore the options? I'm really interested, I want to find out more about this. So can I find out some more, kind of pick your brains, kind of talk to you to find out more to help me make the decision, because I think that's a positive indicator, isn't it?
And if we just quickly go through the negative impact on the children, probably not. Losing face?
No, I don't think so.
Reputational damage?
Yeah.
No. Negative impact on your family, it doesn't really come into it. Rushing a decision, you're clearly not doing that.
Yeah.
You're also, it's a good balance of people pleasing, because you're saying, look, I'm open to this.
You're giving options, aren't you? But you're not committing.
But I'm not just committing, so you're not looking you're showing that resilience in that. And then Ofsted kind of doesn't come into that. So straight away we're moving towards...
It feels like we've increased the opportunities of a better decision now. I think.
Okay,
already.
so we say that and say, I would love to, but actually I need to make a decision by budget tomorrow lunchtime, and I'm not on site. Yeah. So I'm going to need. I'm sorry, an email tomorrow. So let's take that out there. Let's.
Such poor planning.
So now we just say no.
It's just making it hard, isn't it?
I know.
Okay. Well, let's move towards. let's say we kind of know now in our heart, we've already been doing this. Like we're probably going to say yes to this.
Okay. Yeah.
So then, what are the things that are going to, when we say yes, help us mitigate all of those kind of issues that we've gone through as we move forward? So what are those possibilities? And we're not going to go back and forth now. Let's just rattle them out, kind of machine gun. So the first was ask for CPD.
Yeah.
Get a CPD.
That's right.
Another possibility is ask for someone to shadow.
Yeah.
It could be a mentor,
support, guidance.
A person. I think that's important, isn't it? So it's access to information.
Yeah.
Or which could be a course, it could be an online thing, but that's essentially access to information, but also access to a person.
Yeah.
And a commitment that of time and investment from someone else, I think.
And I think, for me as well, personally, just being really open and honest about the fact that it could be, I'm really excited about this opportunity, but I'm actually quite anxious or nervous about the fact that I'm conscious that I don't know enough about early years and I don't want to let anyone down. I think that having that on the table, if we go back to, are you going to lose face? No. Reputational damage? No. Because you've been open and transparent.
Yes, yeah.
In your decision making.
Yeah. Which should fit in with the, I would have thought, the ethos of the school and what they want. And again, transition, some sort of transition, spending time in the environment. You mentioned earlier on about thinking big picture things. I think it is simple things often, isn't it? It's, can you give me a copy of the curriculum to look at, please? How old are the children again? Can I meet some of them? It's that
are they always this small, Jazz?
Yes. Yeah.
Can I just go in groups and not the whole 30 children tapping your shoulder?
Yeah. And maybe some timely opportunities. So, for example, let's say it's a summer term and there's going to be a sort of a parental event. You're saying, can I be in on that? So there are some maybe some events that you think, can I be part of that? So it's all information, but you're starting to get a feel for it as well as actually just just being there, living it, isn't it? I think is an important thing.
And I think if we go back to that pressure of just saying no, or just saying yes and walking away from that, you're still going to have that pressure.
You are,
yeah.
But this feels like actually I'm putting everything down. We've got a way through it.
Yeah, that's really interesting though, because you're right. If you said no, for example, that pressure's there.
Away,
you're walking away, but then there's nobody's helping you because you said no, so that has ceased.
Yeah.
But you're going through your mind. What if? Whereas at least with what we're discussing now, which is okay, we're going to go through this, but let's go through the options so that we're really making a good decision, and we're going to do this properly. That's brilliant support, isn't it? So you've got these multiple layers of support to help, so that would reduce the pressure.
Yeah, massively.
Yeah, 100%. And I think maybe the reality is that. The reality is, and it depends what type of organisation you work for, and you could go, right, no, and they go, okay then, and then they give you a call and say, it's my role to designate the teachers, so you won't be getting a leadership responsibility, but you're teaching in early years from now on. Because and then you're like, no,
is that a common
that's what happened to me. I'm joking.
Jazz loves year 5.
We'll do our own podcast.
But what I'm saying is that you feel like sometimes you can feel like, right, if I do this, it will stop all of this happening.
Yeah.
But you have to have a sense of reality of what I do. It will not change the weather of what's about to happen in the season. It will change. It will put me in a position to cope with it. Yeah. And that's ultimately all you can do. So I know that it's very, very unlikely, and I don't work with any head teachers which would ever make such an abrupt change that would be so against somebody's situation. Yeah. The reality is, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but if we're saying our option is. So we want someone to shadow. So if you went in and said, look, these are the types of things that I thought would help me, and I think starting with this is what I want to avoid. I want to avoid like failing at this job. It's really, really important to me. I want to avoid you looking bad as a head teacher and as a school. I want to avoid damaging the relationships with the people there. I want to avoid early years being a problem in Ofsted. I want it to be. Yeah. So this is what I've looked at, and is there somebody I can shadow? Is there somebody from another school that could come in and help? One of the big things I'm worried about for me personally, if I was in that, would be quality assuring, around assessment time, because I think that would be quite a big shift. Is there somebody in those periods of time that could
for that event,
work me through those assessments and quality assure my judgments and taper that off as we move on? Could I have some initial things where maybe I go to somebody else at one of the other schools and sitting on their PPA, and just addressing, because one of the things is, because by doing this process, and I think that we'll sort of talk about another sort of happy side effect of it, is you've established all the things that you want to put out there. So you're showing you've really thought about this. You're saying, I personally would say, I want to just jump to, the answer is yes, I really want to contribute to this school. There are daunting things, but I'm excited to contribute. Can I just take you through my process?
Yeah.
Just because as a head teacher, I would be sitting there going, "What are you going to say? Yes or no? Are you going to say yes or no? Are you going to say yes or no?"
Sort of starting the email to get the contract ready, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, but then maybe taking them through those things that you've sort of put out there.
Yeah. Because then you get a plan, don't you?
Well, actually, we can't do, but there's this coming up, and you could do that instead.
You could be enrolled on the Kilter leadership programme.
Well, and that would be life changing. But you as an M4 teacher will not be aware of everything that's out there that the head teacher will be aware of.
Yeah,
so
absolutely,
actually, by vocalising those things you want to avoid and the solutions you've come up with, you're giving them a chance to contribute to that as well. So then ultimately, there you go, that's your decision. Do you do it by email? Do you do it face to face? Personally, something like this, I'd avoid doing with an email.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you just lose the tone of it. So even if it couldn't be, it might be, I'd love to have a conversation with you. There's something that popped into my head. I've got a lot of solutions. Rather talk face to face. I know you've got that budget meeting.
Yeah.
Can we do a Teams meeting? Can we do this? To help, to give you clarity, the answer is yes, though. Maybe get that into an email first, and then go through these.
Because you're managing expectations, you're communicating clearly, you're giving that clarity to the leader. You're setting up for it, rather than that someone coming into that situation thinking, "Okay, so what?" It's brilliant. I've now done some thinking. We've both committed to some thinking. So I think that's a good point, a really good sort of subtle point on again how to manage that situation. And I think the you're then starting to talk about the broader picture of what wants to be achieved. I think if someone's really ambitious, I think one of the downsides, if you like, or one of the blind spots that someone needs to be mindful of is to not get stuck on the destination.
Absolutely.
And it's this destinational sort of living that will drive. This post comes up which represents a destination you want to get to. I'm ambitious, I will go for it. And that can lead to those sorts of things. I think you can achieve the same thing, but by thinking more about by positioning yourself so that and trying to think a bit broader. So I want to contribute. I am drawn to the idea of leadership positions. I want to take on more responsibility. So it's broader picture, and therefore, how can I position myself to enable me to take on opportunities when they come up? If it's purely destinational, then that is the issue of looking at job titles and then applying for job titles. And that then can build pressure on yourself because you haven't gone through a process that we're discussing. Whereas I think if you can broaden that out and think, what do I want to do? I want to feel fulfilled. I want, all the cheesy stuff, that sort of thing. So that I will do my best. That will lead to success. So it's just a slight shift, and you can still do the same things and achieve the same things, but I think you've increased your opportunity for doing it successfully.
Yeah.
And let's just say in this situation, I completely agree with you there, and I'd say that destinational first part of my career, of anyone that's spoken to me, I've felt that was my issue, and what I couldn't see was, however simple a task this is, you do this amazingly well, you do this to the best of your ability, you do it in a way that everyone can rely on you, the destination comes to you. By focusing on the destination and sort of looking at those high profile tasks rather than those simple tasks, that destination just keeps going to the next horizon and the next horizon.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, but that's just an aside there. But with this, so we've made that decision. We're going to say yes. We're going to ask for these things when we say it. We've delivered it. We didn't just put it in an email, because again, how you actually carry out this action is a big part of how successful you executing all of these things and avoiding these
qualities as well.
But just not to labour the point, but bang, now we're in a new situation. The situation is you're here. You want to be here. What do you want to avoid? Upsetting a team.
Yeah.
Going in and ruffling people's feathers. changing things and insulting the person that was doing the job before.
Yeah.
You've then got a whole different layer of spikes that you want to avoid, but also excitingly, you've got a whole different sort of string of possibilities. But I'd say stop, have a glass of champagne tonight, enjoy the fact that you've kind of taken that step, but then when you come back in on Monday, start this kind of soda loop again, because your situation has changed regardless of if you say yes or no to this role. Because again, sometimes people can see that, but ultimately if we look at that leadership skill set, yes, the Kilter taxonomy is a really simple but comprehensive way to break down the leadership skill set. Highly recommended. But all that is the best thing for progression. Like banging out really great results in year 5, year in, year out, are nowhere near going to be as effective as going, they were great over here. Are they early years? No, they have no experience in early years. They've brought the team together. They've galvanised them. It's so much more positive down there.
Yes.
You walk in there, you feel how purposeful it is. Yeah. A couple of things have happened, but they've addressed it really head on, and they've brought people with them even when they've had tough conversations. And that's moving you massively in a direction. And the fact that it's so far out of your comfort zone only puts more fuel on that fire.
Yeah, absolutely. And that demonstrates really why leadership is a completely different role. And that's why it does need this process to go through. And again, referring back to that, the soda loop, what I like about it is you can do that. You can almost have multiple ones running. So the example you've just given, okay, so now you're there. You could be running a soda loop on an individual. There could be a member of staff who doesn't really know you, and all they know is that you've come from year 5. They've been they're a member of the support team, highly skilled, been working there for 17 years. But maybe they're a bit prickly because they don't know who you are, and that's a soda loop you need to walk through just for that person. There might be another thing which is not necessarily negative. It's an opportunity for enhancing an element of the curriculum. Okay, you can use a soda loop for that. So you can almost have multiple processes running, depending on the scale of them. But you're being consistent in how you go about things. You're dealing with it calmly.
Yeah.
You're not letting the pressure build and then that leading your decision making because you're suddenly thinking, I've got to do this, I've got to do this.
Because either any of those situations where you avoid the process and you quickly make that rash decision, the knock-on effect that will then have on everything else.
Huge.
But stopping and going through the process, hopefully now will show actually that the pressure will ease, but also it's in everyone's best interest. You personally, but also your team, the children, your school, your head, everything.
Yeah. I agree. And
can I just jump in? The other thing as well, though, with the by not making the decision, by saying, right, just give me a week to think about it, you're not going, the loop will be complete within a week, and all you're doing is going, I'm going to take a week to take this plaster off.
Yes. You're avoiding it.
Bit by bit. So I'm going to delay this pressure, and I kind of, how early do you really truly know? And it feels like if I give it more time, I'll feel something else, or it'll feel easier. And it just, but so it really is. We always talk about leadership being a skill of balance. That it is. It's don't rush the decision, don't delay it. But I really like the kind of
the balanced approach.
Yeah, and the adage of give the thing the time it takes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not more. Not less. Yeah. But give the decision. And just by processes like this, you get a feeling for, I'm not going to be able to make a decision in an hour here, or actually we just need 15 minutes for something like this. Like I've done this 10 times before.
Yeah,
so sorry to interrupt.
No, and if anyone listening to this is in a situation where they're thinking, it doesn't just have to be someone that's ambitious. It can, as in they are outwardly ambitious. They're known to be ambitious. They will say yes. That could be crafted or not, but people's perception is, they're an ambitious person, and equally, some people may have a perception of someone else. They think, oh, they're not ambitious, which could be not as accurate. It's just the way in which they go about things. They're not perhaps as destination driven, that things will come. But what I would say from personal experience, having not gone through any process when I made a big decision to go into a leadership role, now it meant that I then had 18 months of chaos in my life, really, because yes, it was a great ride, but when I look back, would I do that again? No. Would I recommend that someone just did exactly what I did? No, because there were lots and lots of unintended consequences along that line. I would have made the same decision, but I'd have been much better prepared for it. Other people in my life would have been better prepared for it, and instead what I was doing was just bouncing and reacting and just reacting and reacting to all the things I didn't know and hadn't thought about, because I hadn't gone through options, decisions. I hadn't thought about those things in that careful way, and so it just meant that I lost time. I was always under pressure, and so what I did was, as I mentioned in previous podcasts, what I thought was the intuitive thing, I just extended the day, did more, saw less of my family, and so on and so on, and got stuck in that. And I wasn't particularly good at the job either. So nothing was working because I hadn't really sorted it all out. Whereas I do feel if I'd gone through a process, I still would have said yes. It still would have been hard. I still would have been under pressessure. But
the process and the execution of your decision would have been completely
absolutely different. I think there would be some key elements that would have been avoided that were unintended consequences. So that's the benefit of going through this sort of this processes to help with your decision.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I guess my very final thing would be, and I guess the call to action is too cheesy a term, even for me. But it's to say, I hope that people, what I really hope is people have listened to this, and people that are not as outwardly ambitious, because I just see it all the time in so many classrooms, just real capacity and real strength to have more of a contribution and lead to people, but they look at something like decision making, they look at something like pressure and just say, I'm never going to do it. And then what happens is, just as more naturally, sometimes what happens is more naturally relaxed people, but they're relaxed about everything, including the sort of fine detail which is needed in the job, people like me. They'll go, yeah, okay then, I'll do it. And then what we end up with is that tilt towards leadership, people put themselves forward who don't have that eye for detail, they don't have, and then we have an unbalanced picture. So I really hope that people have heard this and said, even though I find it quite terrifying to think about, to use like real language, there's a way that I can approach this, and there's people, especially sort of, there's people that will help me through it as well. It's not like a bang, you're here and now you've got to do this. There's a graduated approach, and I'll develop it as a skill, even though if it doesn't feel natural to me right now. Every single part of leadership is a skill that can be developed and I can get better at, and I might never feel like I enjoy pressure, but I can certainly feel much more comfortable, and I can make better decisions sort of over and over again.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, that decision making isn't just an emotional arena. And maybe that's why someone said, I don't want to do that because I think it will make me feel like that, and I'm no good with that, or I don't want to do that. Whereas, as you say, if it's a process and a skill set, then maybe that opens up these roles to other people, other really talented people, and will bring a balanced team, more balanced team, because we're not just relying on a smaller group of people to come through. So good point.